I'm not sure I fully understand what the point of all of it is. It's a big statement, but I was thinking about a letter I read that came home in my son's folder from school. And on the surface, and maybe overall, it's an innocent, very logical, very appropriate letter. And I don't take I don't have like a visceral issue with it, but when I think about it deeply, it seems representative of an issue. So he recently started playing an instrument at school because he's in fourth grade now, and that's something you do. So you pick, what instruments you want to play. He got assigned the violin, so he's in the orchestra. So he goes into school early on Tuesdays to practice, to do orchestra practice. On Wednesdays, he has to leave class for a bit to do individual violin practice and then make up whatever work he missed, while he was at violin for homework as part of his add-on to his homework. And a letter came home yesterday from the orchestra teacher saying, it's important to practice violin. It's important to spend, or whatever your instrument is, spend 20 minutes a day, keep a log 5 days a week, documenting that you practice, because practice is important and that's how you get better, et cetera, which is true, right? I tell my son that all the time. Nobody's usually good at anything off the bat. You have to practice and then you become good at it. But I couldn't help but think, all right, this is violin. This is one thing which he has to do, right? Play an instrument, and now there's different lessons he's got to take and practice he's got to do and extra homework he's got to make up because of it. And then there's other things, right? He's part of the chorus, which is something that he really enjoys, and they do that before school, and it's every day, on Fridays, and there's certain work that comes along with that. And then there's your regular homework that you have to do, and obviously you're in school, the 5 days a week. And then it's a good thing, right? We all know this. You should try and do different things. So he does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he does a hip-hop dance class, and he does a science club, and he doesn't even do that much compared to some other kids, but there's a lot. So when you think of it in the context of that, I was thinking about the violin letter that came home. And I was honestly thinking to myself, all right, so he's in school till 4 o'clock-ish every day. He's got about an hour of homework every day. He's supposed to practice violin. He's supposed to practice, his dance. He's supposed to practice for orchestra. He's supposed to practice for other things he does. He's got to eat. He's got to sleep at some point. He's got to take a shower. You should spend time with your family because that's important. You should take time to just be creative and have fun and think and do that because that's important. You should relax. You should get some downtime, right? If you want to watch a little TV, you should do that. And you start adding all this up in the violin practice, right? And it's when is there time to do all this stuff? It's so regimented and structured. How is this meant to work? And, what I find myself thinking is, I don't know that anybody's kind of zooming out and looking at it and understanding all the different things kids could have to do. And, the violin teacher, I'm sure, was innocently just saying, hey, it'd be good to practice. You should practice, right? 20 minutes a day, thinking nothing much of it. But nobody's looking at all of it put together. And I can't help but think, and I've had this conversation with family members, my wife, other people. When I bring this up and I illustrate this as an issue, the common response is well, what do you mean? What do you think? They shouldn't have any responsibility? They shouldn't practice at all? And it's no, obviously it's not that. But there should be some balance. And more so, though, is anybody actually taking the time to think about what all this is for and why we're doing it, right? Because in that response of why should they have no responsibility, there's this implicit or sometimes explicit view that is, well, they have to learn. Right? He's in fourth grade now. He has to learn about discipline and structure and practice and responsibilities. And, it's not all just fun anymore. And I can't help but think, as I often do, all right, let's follow that thread. Why does he have to learn? What are we learning for? What are we teaching these kids for in fourth grade that they have to be so structured and regimented? And you kind of follow that thread along, and it's well, because they need to get good grades and they need to do this so they can get a good job. And ultimately, it comes down to this thought of well, we're trying to prepare them for life. Right? Real life. What are you going to do if you have a job and your boss tells you have to do something you don't want to do, right? You got to do it, and we're trying to prepare them for that. And again, I can't help but thinking what are we actually preparing them for? Are we preparing them for how miserable life can be, how stressful it can be, how bad it could be? This idea that we need to make their lives somewhat miserable now so that when they're older, they're ready for that. They understand the miserableness of life and they're prepared for it. That seems so illogical to me. It seems to make so little sense to me that we would ever do that. That we've, maybe from lack of thinking or not being thoughtful enough about it, we've gotten to this point where we've convinced ourselves that all these things we need to put on our kids is for their betterment because it's going to allow them to cope with a shitty life later on. It's going to allow them to deal with the things that suck about life later. The fact that you don't have control of your own time, you don't have time to just be creative or have fun and do what you want to do, the fact that you're going to have people telling you what to do and demanding things of you and there's never enough time in the day. Yeah, that's the answer. That's the solution. We're going to prepare them for that. We're going to make it like that now so that when it's like that later, it's not that big of a deal, rather than thinking like, maybe there's something broken in this. Maybe we should stop perpetuating this and preparing them for something that we all kind of know already sucks and figure out how to actually make life better. And that doesn't mean it's just, sit on your iPad and watch TikTok all day. It's not that. It's not about laziness. It's not about jumping to that other extreme and saying nothing matters and there's no responsibility and just have fun all the time. It's about allowing people to embrace the good parts of life. Sometimes that is having fun and relaxing with your friends or watching TV. Sometimes that's going out in the backyard and just exploring for an hour and just having nothing else to do and saying, I'm going to figure it out and just have fun. Sometimes it's spending time with family. It's all different things. But this idea that even at 9 years old, we need to prepare them for the idea that that's not what life is. You don't get to do the things you want to do. You don't get to experience the beautiful things you want to do most of the time. You get a little bit of it, but most of the time, no, you're doing things you don't want to be doing, that you're being forced to do. And that's just life, because you need to make enough money or you need to get a good enough job, or that's just how society deems it. Well, what if it's fucking stupid? What if we should think of it better and do it better? What if the things we see with our kids in school right now is the perfect manifestation or representation of how shitty it can be and how broken it can be? And their innocence and their purity for life exposes that so beautifully, because they look at it and they say, like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it this way? Versus us, who are just so jaded and indoctrinated in it that we just think it makes perfect sense. Or I don't know, maybe I'm just a lazy bastard who doesn't want to do anything and thinks we should enjoy life more, and that's naive and idealistic. Maybe.